All right, it's 5:30, time to call the meeting to order. Would you please stand as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, gentlemen, first thing on our list is the adoption of the agenda, and we have a couple of items that have been added. We have item G. This would be on items for commission action. Consider scheduling the special commission meeting for October the 9th, 2019 for a site visit to the water plant at 9 a.m. and a work session at Memorial Hall to review Phase 2 at 10 a.m. And then under public concerns, under executive session, we do have an executive session of 15 minutes attorney-client privilege. So with that being said, do you have any questions concerning the additions to the agenda?
I do not.
Okay.
No, I don't.
I make a motion that we adopt the agenda with the additions of item G and an executive session.
I second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. All right. First, we have appointments to the electrical board. And I believe this position is filling one that was the resignation of Randy Kelly. Okay. I know Randy had served about 21 or 22 years on the electrical board. So I had a chance to talk to him and hear if he's watching this meeting or watches it later on. Thank him for all those years of service on the electrical board. And I have one application here, Rick Kister, who I've had the pleasure of working with when I was an employee of Westar. Very knowledgeable person. And I moved to have Rick Kister fill the position on the electrical board. All in favor signify by saying aye.
I'll second the motion.
Or second the motion, excuse me. I'm a little excited here. I know Rick. He'll be excited. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All righty. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. He'll be a good one. He's a good guy. All right.
Tell him he has to stay for 20 years.
I didn't tell him that.
Okay, good. Best to let him find out later.
That's in the fine print.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so, all right, moving on to the consent agenda. Have you had a chance to, excuse me, to look at the consent agenda, and do you have any concerns with that?
No.
I'm good.
I don't have anything to remove from it.
All right, I make a motion that we adopt the consent agenda.
I'll second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All right, moving right along. Items for commission action. A, consider ADA improvements at 113 East Myrtle Street. David, how are you this evening?
I am good, Mayor. How
Good.
are you and Commissioners? I have Sean
Andy.
here, and at the last meeting, Mayor, you guys provided us some instruction. I'll let Sean speak to what they did, but they gave you a revised cost estimate for that project. And if you have any specific questions, we could definitely answer those.
All right. Sean, how are you?
Good.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you. What we did in our estimate, based on our discussions last time, we took out the ramp to the building. We just are doing the ramps at the alleyway, and then we're making improvements for parking in the existing parking lot, and that's pretty much all that is in the scope of work. So.
And we see that the cost for the 388 ramps and the parking stalls is in the amount of $7,721.55.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Is this your estimate, or is that?
I said estimate, but it's based on unit prices from Graham Construction.
Okay.
So it can be a change order. Yes.
Okay. So it's tied into The only thing that would vary is actually maybe the quantities once they get
Slightly.
it put in.
Yeah, as-built quantities may slightly vary, but we believe we're on the high side.
Okay.
And Commissioners, Jeff can speak to the right-of-way use agreement, so that you,
Yeah.
I don't know if I know enough to speak. I don't know what's being put in the right of way.
they are going to build I believe either aluminum or a metal ramp, Leonard?
Yeah.
I know the doorway is recessed. I was questioning
Right.
whether it actually was going to be in the right of way or on private property.
No, they'll need to construct more like a landing from the main entrance to the west entrance, about 5 feet out from the building. They're going to build it out of steel, so it will be on the city right of way. It's not built within the property line.
On agreements, you got to be specific and
Yeah.
describe it. I just need something that tells me that.
Once they determine what they're going to use,
Then we can get with
they
Jeff
should
and
write
get
it up. Yeah.
Yep, okay.
The
But-
size and everything. then,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other questions concerning this?
None for me.
Good?
Good.
All right.
I did check with
Yes.
Westmore on that light that we had talked about in the back, and they said around $15 to $20 depending on the size of the lights. Asked them for the different size and then the breakdown, and I haven't gotten that yet, so I'll bring that back to you when I have something more concrete on that to light up that parking lot.
Okay.
And Mayor, I will tell you, we are removing the trees, but we will go back with an appropriate tree on the corner as part of that. So if somebody
Okay.
complains, we're taking them down because of the hazards they were creating for people walking.
Sure. Are there 3 trees in that parking lot that will be removed?
Yeah, we're removing everything. There were some bushes back to the south that we even cleaned up, but we will
Okay.
put a tree back. Barb will work on that with an appropriate tree
Okay.
in the near future. Soon. Yep.
Okay, great.
Are you going to put the tree next to the building, the one that obscured the flags?
Yes, it's coming down.
But are you going to put another tree back there?
We only planned on the corner at this time,
Yeah,
Leonard, and
that's good.
we wasn't going to put anything else there, just so that the light could flood through that area,
Right.
and so people was our thought, and
Yeah.
so that the flags could be seen.
I thought that's what
Yes, I
you
think that's what
mentioned
we all talked
when we were
about.
there, so that'd be good.
Yep.
Yeah, great.
Any further questions?
No.
Good. All right. I move to authorize city staff to do a change order with Graham Construction for 88 ramps and parking stalls at 113 East Maple on the parking lot for $7,721.55. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item B, consider an agreement with Trans Systems for engineering services for milling and concrete overlay of a portion of West Main Street. Mike, how are you?
Yeah, this item is the agreement between the city and Trans Systems for the mill and concrete overlay project that we awarded by KDOT. And it is on West Main from the Super 8, goes through the intersection of Peter Pan a ways there. And Trans Systems was on the list of available engineering firms to pick from. And if you have some questions for Sean, he's here too about the project.
There's been a more like a speed bump at the transition from concrete to the asphalt somewhere there. It's been milled off recently.
Yeah, I believe that's at the east edge of the red block. What the history of this city originally applied for just a normal mill and asphalt overlay, beginning at that speed bump and going west to the city limits. And then in discussion with KDOT would like to see the Peter Pan intersection turned to concrete. So really the first step to see if we can do that is really to do a geotechnical investigation before we'll know for sure. But the
That's
idea-
included
Yeah,
in the
it's
scope of the project.
Yes.
We will address it, okay.
Yes, we will. There's a geotechnical investigation in the scope, and then we'll determine after that if we can do the white topping or if we have to do the regular asphalt mill and overlay as originally applied for. If we do the asphalt mill and overlay, we can still do all the way to city limits, but the concrete, it's really only going to fit in the budget for this area.
Okay, that's where I was confused. I thought we were going from there to the city limits, but what if we go with the concrete, white topping, that's the scope of the work. But
Yes.
if we can't white top, then the mill and overlay will go to the city limits,
Correct.
or is it just reduced to this?
No, it would be city limits. The KDOT will allow the city to go up to $300,000. We don't think construction's going to be that high, but
Okay.
they did allow you to go up to the maximum amount of the grant. And if it's asphalt, if I remember right, it's only going to be about $175,000 in construction. But if it's concrete, we'll probably use it all and only do
Right.
about that much. So.
How thick would the concrete white
Well,
topping be?
it depends on the geotechnical investigation, but typically the way it works on the concrete overlays or the white topping, if it's 3 inches thick, then you saw cut it on 3-inch joints, and we found out that doesn't work very well. So we want to go at least 4 inches thick and hopefully 6. 6 is best, and then we're basically going to saw cut it into 6-foot blocks out there after it's laid, just to control the cracking. But so 3 to 6, but we wouldn't want to go less than 4. In reality, just the condition of what we think that concrete's going to be in. So.
Just the amount of traffic and the weight and the size of traffic that goes through that intersection. I can see why you would want to look at 6-inch being just for the sheer volume and the weight of the vehicles that are moving through that.
Yeah, that asphalt has shoved and rutted really bad in the intersection. That's why KDOT's kind of pushed us in that direction of trying to get it into concrete intersections.
You say they've pushed us. Does that mean it's still our choice, or that's what we're doing?
Just if it's viable.
If it's viable, that's what we're doing.
Yes, we don't.
The other one feels like a lot more for our money.
Correct.
Yeah, this doesn't look like we're getting much for our bucks.
The problem, the biggest challenge is we didn't have curb and gutter, it'd be a pretty easy fix. We can raise the road up, but we've got curb and gutter and all kinds of things to tie into out there, so it's just going to be a challenge to
A darned curb and gutter.
to white top it.
So how thick is the asphalt? So you can mill 6 inches of asphalt and still have a solid base.
Yeah, that's the question. There's asphalt over concrete, and we need to determine the thicknesses of both, because we know we're going to have to mill into the concrete some, and just can we and save what's left of the concrete without compromising its integrity. So until we know that depth, we're not going to know if we can do it or not.
Okay. But looking at it, the way the elevation works out with the new concrete on West Main east of that joint, it looks like that was just an asphalt road.
Correct.
And it's concrete with asphalt over it, so the elevation was adjusted. Okay.
Right. That's what we suspect anyway.
Yeah.
And you may remember, Mike, is there concrete?
I
under
believe
that?
so,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's what we think too. So.
So the way this project is shown here on the map, then, if it's concrete, we're looking at basically that section of road. The money's pretty much going to be taken up by
Correct.
what's presented here on the screen. So, and then they just I don't know what they milled and overlaid, but they did from Caney, from Caney city limits all the way to the west end or the west city limits of Independence. So if this is the case, this is all we're going to be able to do. Are we going to be able to, will we have funding to complete that section back and meet the west end?
We have discussed that. If we do the concrete, we're going to max out the KDOT grant.
Okay.
But the city may want to do that with just city money, do the mill and overlay from that point to city limits, or you may want to apply next year for that under a KDOT program.
Okay.
Those are things to consider, though. And yeah, Mike brought up the same point. There's going to be a gap of
Right.
improved pavement between this project and what KDOT has done.
So do you have an idea as far as if we have to fill in that particular gap, what kind of money we're looking at? Just a rough estimate. I'm not going to hold you to it.
Well, I have
Ballpark.
100,000.
Okay. Okay.
But by the time it's designed, it's going to be a year or so,
Correct.
at least,
It
to do
wouldn't be
that.
this
So
season.
Yeah.
we could still apply for a grant just in case we get it. So the contract we're looking at now is just for this section?
Yeah, when the geotech is complete, whether it's the concrete in that area or the mill and overlay for the entire area, it'll be for the same maximum fee. If it's overlay, it's going to be less than the amount.
Oh.
We'll underrun that amount
Okay,
considerably.
So then, although the contract that we're talking about is addressed to this area, the contract really is applicable clear to city limits.
Yes.
If it's a mill and overlay.
Yes.
Is that,
It is. I don't believe it's worded that way, but we can add that verbiage pretty easily.
I think, if that's the way if the price is going to be for either way, I think we should tie it in to our contract now so that we're all on the same page,
Right.
that it's not
Yeah.
misunderstood later and come up with a,
I don't have a problem with that.
yeah.
Okay.
Do you,
I
Do you guys agree?
I think so, yeah. So that way we all
Makes sense.
understand what this project entails and what it's going to do, regardless of how this plays out. Yeah.
While he's here, you might, I don't know if he has any updates on any of our other grants since he's here.
Sure.
Have you
Okay.
heard anything on
Have you heard
of
any
them?
news, any good news?
Have not yet. Have not heard any news to report yet. But the cost share grant isn't due till, I believe it's October 8th.
And you're still working on
Yeah,
the application?
Yes, we have a rough cost estimate complete, but it's not quite ready to present yet. But,
Okay, and this is in reference to what project?
Maple Street, I believe the city.
Okay,
It was-
just
you already
just-
approved
yeah,
it.
just west of
He's
the
working on
railroad
it.
tracks all the way
Yeah.
to Peter
Application.
Pan.
And that cost share program, I don't know if it's explained very well on KDOT's website, but every year they're going to have, I believe it's $12 million in that program, but this year they have an extra $50 million, so it's pretty important to get an application in this year. So.
okay.
And that was the one, if I remember right, that we would have to have matching funds of 20,
Minimum of 25%.
minimum of 25%
Eligible
to
for
be
the bigger
eligible
pot of money.
for the bigger pot of money. Okay. Okay.
And have you got a schedule for the start of construction for the extension on Peter Pan?
Yes, it's, I believe the notice to proceed date is October 14th. Yes, October 14th.
So we'll start before winter.
Yes, and the excavation and demolition contractors, Mueller Excavating, and they typically move pretty fast. So our hope is we'll have good enough weather to get the demo done, the base down, where they can continue to pour concrete all winter during warm enough periods. But I
And
think
it'll be a shutdown of Peter Pan Road like
Correct.
before, correct?
correct.
And you're working with Labette Health. That won't affect them on this one, will it?
Their north entrance will be closed, but their
Okay.
south entrance will be open. And then there will be temporary gravel access to the other residents at all times. And
Okay.
they are aware that we had to get at least temporary easements from all those properties impacted by the project, so they're all aware of the project. So. And the other one hanging out there, the access management, we have not heard back on the access management at 10th and Main. So.
Okay.
And the timeline on this project being the weather holds, and what is the estimated completion date for this project?
For this one, or
The Peter Pan extension,
90 days.
90 days?
90 days?
Yeah, 90 calendar days. And there's inclement weather allowed, working through the winter. I'm sure they'll get, probably be another 30 days added to it anyway.
Okay. Okay. In case people ask, if they haven't heard it here, when they watch the meeting, if they ask us, we'll know the date to give them, so they'll have some idea.
And ADA progressing well.
Yeah, it's about 40% complete. They milled 10th Street today. The work in front of the liquor store is not complete, but I believe Hallett's, but I believe everything else is pretty well complete on 10th Street. And then they're moving to 5th Street and work there, do the work downtown after Neowalla.
A lot of activity.
Yeah.
That's good.
It is good. We have kind of lagged behind on making improvements to our streets, and it's good to see that there's a lot of asphalt being put down. It's something people can see and relate to, and see that we're spending a considerable amount of their money to make improvements to our streets. So I think at the last count for this year, it was in the amount of $487,000 plus. If I remember right, I don't remember the exact dollar amounts, but it's just a little over $487,000, which is a pretty good chunk of money. Of course, that only includes probably about 2.5 miles of road work, but it's a start. You have to start somewhere, and you have to continue to build on that. We've got a lot of roads that need a lot of attention. So, all right, gentlemen, any other questions?
So you're going to revise the contract and then bring it back to Kelly?
Yes.
You could make the motion to include that.
I was going to ask Kelly, did KDOT need this by a certain date? Do you remember that? Were we running?
Lacey, do you remember?
I think so. They've been on us
To get this done, so
It may,
if you could
you may
approve
want
it
to
with
do
that
it
amendment in
contingent.
it, that way we don't have to wait until the
Yeah,
next
can we
meeting.
add that language to
We don't want to miss any days.
Have Jeff review it.
to this?
Yeah.
To the clarification of the scope of work.
Yes, regarding that, it includes milling and overlaying if that, to the city limits, if
Right.
that option is the viable option. Yep.
Yeah, I didn't realize the change, or I would have sent a,
Yeah, I didn't think about that
Request,
either. We would have
yeah.
written it that way to start with.
Okay, so can we add this language to this motion and then send it on through? Okay. Then I make a motion, I move to authorize the mayor to sign an engineering agreement with Trans Systems for the West Main Clink project, and including clarification of the scope of work. Do I need to add more than that?
That includes milling and overlaying to the city limits.
Okay, that include milling and overlay to the west city limits of Main Street.
I'll second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
aye.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right, item C, consider conditional use permits for bed and breakfast, boarding and rooming houses, and short-term rentals not elsewhere listed at the following locations. And we'll address the item number 1 first. Short-term rentals not listed elsewhere, listed in an R-3, low-density multifamily dwelling district at 305 South 10th Street. And
Applicants present, which is George Isley.
Actually, okay, yes. George, you filled out a form to address the city commission. How are you this evening, sir?
Doing well, thank you.
Good.
I'm George Isley. My wife Julie is also here tonight. We've been to 2 zoning meetings, 1 city commission meeting. We've been approved 3 times. We've kind of discussed our operation, I guess, so to speak. I guess I really don't have a whole lot to add. I just want to be available to address any concerns, questions. I don't know if anybody out here has anything to say, but just basically be available for rebuttal and questions and answers. I've got about 30 minutes worth of material here that I'd just soon forego.
Yeah.
But I'm an open book, so if you guys have any questions or concerns before you do what you do, well, I'm here.
Okay. I don't see anyone else that has filled out a request to address the city commission on this, so it looks like you're the only one.
The planning commission, Mayor, considered this item. This is actually the 200-foot notification area for George's applicant or application. And the planning commission recommended approving the conditional use with the 2 conditions that the off-street parking will be provided on the applicant's private property. Exterior lighting will not have an adverse effect by shining it onto any neighboring properties. And then I suggested that we add language that we normally add in our conditional use permits. The conditional use permit is not transferable to another property owner or to another location. The applicant must be in compliance with all city codes and must continue to be in compliance with all city codes. And this is, the bed and breakfast does generate sales tax, transient guest tax. He would get an occupation license for this location. We will be bringing back to you a modification in the code to take these properties out of the minimum standards for rental housing because they're really more of like a business type thing. So we will be bringing that to you at a later date. So this is the recommendation of the Planning Commission and staff. And there is a resolution in your packet.
So what code then would it come under? Just an existing house?
It would be like a business, like an occupation license, like if you have a bed and breakfast in a commercial zone or whatever, you get a city license.
Mm-hmm.
The minimum standards for rental housing is really meant for people not that are just, there a
Right.
short period of time. It's for people that are leasing for a longer period of time. So it really wasn't intended to address these types, but it doesn't specifically exclude them. So now that we have a conditional use permit process in place, it makes sense to take it out of that minimum standards for rental housing because it doesn't make sense to have them in both places. It's more of a zoning thing.
Yeah, it'd be good to review both aspects too, because some of the requirements are very burdensome, and this provides a good opportunity for people coming to town, and of course, you and your wife an opportunity for income on the property, but it provides a lot of interns coming to work for our factories, or even just somebody traveling. I think it really is an interesting concept to see it developed, and I hate to add more burden to
Yeah, that's why we want to take them out of
Right.
the minimum standards because any conditions that you have relating to one of these, you can add in this process. So.
yeah, even what we've got here, the exterior lighting will not be adverse effect by shining onto any neighbor's property. That's kind of odd too, because I don't think you're going to put security lights and spotlights up, and it'll blend in with just basically a house on the block.
Right.
You're not going to add anything. The off-street parking, is that just kind of a general requirement because there's a driveway?
Yeah, there's plenty of off-street parking. So that's some of the complaints we get on different things like this, is people will be worried about, well, is there going to be all these cars in front of my house? Because of all this, or if they're gonna have lighting that's gonna shine, and, you know, we've gotten those complaints a lot, that's why we included those on previous other things.
Yeah, and with 10th Street, is there curbside parking on 10th? I don't remember.
No, I don't
So-
believe so. I believe that was removed
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
Steve DeFever was on the commission, if I remember right.
Yeah, there isn't.
Because I remember a long discussion about that. But this is
That
also.
Steve played prominently, apparently.
This is also a multifamily zone too. It's an R3. So,
Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch.
You good?
Good, sounds great.
Good?
I'm good.
Sounds
Need
good
it.
to me too. So, George, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, you didn't need to spend 30 minutes.
I'm glad.
Yeah, and I couldn't probably have, would wanted to speed that up a little bit too. Okay, and then the item 2, well, I need to move this
make a
first.
motion on that.
Yeah, on the first one. Okay, on the item 1, I move to accept the recommendation from the Planning Commission and adopt a resolution approving a conditional use permit for a short-term rental in an R3 zone district at 305 South 10th Street. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Item number 2, this was concerned a bed and breakfast in an R1 large lot, single-family dwelling district at 2712 Rolling Green Drive.
Mayor, this was an application by Renita Butler, and actually she had been doing this for a few years and didn't realize that it wasn't really allowed in that zone. It was more of kind of a boarding house. She had one room she was renting out, 10 turns and things like that. We had the hearing, and several of our neighbors showed up concerned about it. I think a lot of that was they didn't know exactly what she was doing, but and then you get a notice and you always kind of expect the worst. But
Right.
during that process, Renita decided to rescind her application, and so the Planning Commission voted to deny the application. And she did send me a letter that I put in your packets
Right.
that she asked me to forward to you.
We saw
So
that.
the recommendation on this is to deny the conditional use permit based on the applicant rescinding her request.
Matter of fact, I had a couple of the people that live in that neighborhood. They've contacted me and approached me about this. It was something that they were unaware of, and they had some issues with it. And I think there were a fair number that showed up at the planning and zoning.
Yeah, we had 8 or 9. I did send the notices out for requirements at least 20 days prior to the hearing, so they
Right.
were all notified.
Right.
And, but yeah, there was probably 8 or 9 that showed up, if
Sure.
I recall.
Okay. All right, gentlemen, anything else?
No.
All right, I make a motion that we deny a conditional use permit for a bed and breakfast at 2712 Rolling Green. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Item D, consider a resolution adopting an administrative policy to define credit card procedures for city departments and employees. Lacey, how are you this
I'm
evening?
good. How are you?
Dandy, thank you.
Okay, so you all had a chance to look over this policy previously. I believe David presented it at the last meeting, and you all just had a couple of clarification questions, mostly regarding the table. Is that correct?
Well, the first one was, I thought maybe you could explain why a separate policy and not including it in the procurement policy.
Because the procurement policy is the process for which we go about procuring our goods and services. It doesn't really matter how you pay for them. This is strictly how you pay for them. Has nothing to do with the steps you take in order to determine who you go with or how you procure those goods or services. It is
Understand.
strictly dealt with how you
Okay.
pay for them.
Okay.
But the table does match. I did see 2 words that were missing in some of the boxes, but they don't really change the content of the boxes. Really, the only thing that has changed is the purchase method section.
Maybe that was what I I noticed that there were a couple of those words that were different, and I just thought that they should be identical.
And I would propose that I correct these two mistakes. So in the box for $15,001 to $25,000, the procurement policy says city manager, and this credit card policy says department head city manager. So I can take department head out of that, and then the next box down for 25001 and more, I should take out department head, and then the purchasing policy says governing body for single contracts of 25,001 or above. So I'll make that change so that they are truly identical, with the exception of the purchase method column.
And that was the only questions that I had. I wanted to understand what you were thinking with the purchase policy and this separate, and that the purchase authority and limits matched.
Yes, and the credit card limits, the limit, there's a transaction limit on every card,
Right.
and you, without going through the proper authority, you physically can't make a purchase over that amount.
Okay.
All right, and Gary, are you good?
I'm good.
All right, Lacey, thank you very much.
Yep.
All right, then, I move to approve a resolution with the changes that have been brought up that you will make on the document, Lacey, to adopt the formal credit card policy as provided to the commission. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Lacey, thank you very much. Item E, consider adopting a resolution to enter into a forgivable loan agreement with Indie Brew Works.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to recuse myself
Okay.
on this discussion.
Understand?
As
All
usual.
right. Thank you.
All right, this is something that has been brought up a couple of times now in the form of a policy and a one-time payment. I'm bringing it back to you, taking into consideration all of the feedback that I have heard, to do a forgivable loan agreement with Indie Brew Works. And the agreement itself I took from an agreement that Wichita has done for a forgivable loan to a business. But before I go through the agreement itself, I'd like to take you through my thought process and the things that I look at when determining, why should we be incentivizing Indie Brew Works versus another business, and why should it be an upfront payment versus a payment, spread out over years or at the end of the year or something like that. So first of all, there is no other business in Independence just like this. So it can be argued that this business isn't going to, pull tax dollars or business from one business and just transfer it to this business from an already established business. Instead, it will create a new sales tax revenue stream. Also, it was the reason that a brewery was targeted to bring into Independence was a direct result, an action item out of the Robert Brooks study that was done a number of years ago. So we had this study done, and they specifically said what would enhance your downtown specifically is if you could bring in this type of business. So we're wanting to incentivize them because they are a targeted business. I brought up sales tax revenue for a very important reason. This business is unique that, it will not collect the 3% sales tax that other retail businesses collect. It will collect 10% in liquor tax, and that's collected by the state. But 70% of that 10% comes back to Independence. So that's like the city collecting a direct 7% sales tax. So I did what I do best, and I crunched some numbers. And at a 7% sales tax, it will take Indie Brew Works $71,429 of sales to pay us back $5,000. And I spoke with Robert Box and I said, can you give me your revenue projections for the next 2 years? You know, what are we looking at? And he did. In year one, they're projecting $257,000 in sales, and in year two, $281,000. For year one, that 7% tax collected would generate almost $18,000 in sales tax revenue for the city. So if you divided that out on a straight line average for a year, we're looking at that would be $1,499 a month. And to get to the $5,000 back to us, it would arguably only take them less than 3.5 months to produce $5,000 in sales tax revenue. So we're not talking a lot of money. This is an investment. We're investing in them to get something in return. So this has a very high return on investment for the city. I'd also like to point out that the liquor tax funds 3 different funds. A third of it goes to the general fund, a third of it goes to the special park and recreation, and then the last third goes to the special alcohol programs. In 2018, we collected $92,627.88 in liquor tax. And year to date, we've collected $76,380.72. And to kind of put that into perspective of what Indie Brew Works will bring to those numbers, if they hit their year one target, they will have increased our sales tax revenue for liquor tax by 19%. So they are bringing a significant contribution to our city.
All right, Lacey, thank you. This information does help as far as what projected revenue could be. You know, there's been a lot of issues with this, and my hope is that the owner contractors is diligently moving to meet some of the stipulations so the brewery can go ahead and open. So I mean that's my feeling. I understand he knows the urgency of it, and it rests in his hands whether the opening is gonna happen or not. So I know he's under a lot of pressure. So I'm wishing him well, that he moves with speed, and we don't have any issues when the time comes. But it rests in his hands. So the $5,000 isn't an excessive amount, and this breakdown does bring some information to me. I was unaware of the actual 7% that we would be getting back on that 10% liquor tax that would be going to the state. So it does give some additional revenue, and it would increase what we're already receiving now on a yearly basis. You indicated here a third going to the general fund, a third to Parks and Rec, and a third to the alcohol program. And you indicated $92,387 in liquor tax collected, and with the Indie Brew Works coming online, you projected an increase based on what the sales are projected to be of $19,000 on top of that. So you're looking at another, take the top of my head, $18,000.
That's correct, and that's over 2018 actuals.
2018 actuals, okay. So we'd be looking at roughly $110,000 in collected liquor tax. You know, we're in the process of establishing an economic advisory board. Matter of fact, today is the closing date for applications. We extended them out a little bit because I wanted the ads to go into the papers, and I've seen them, And we have gotten some more people that had become aware of it, that had called and become aware and have filled out that. And they'll be coming on board. We will announce, or we will move and select who will be serving on that economic board. There's been a lot of controversy over this. Looking at this, I myself personally would like to maybe come up with some type of a compromise here. As far as concerning what you presented here, my thoughts are, as a measure of good faith, this would probably be normally what I would not be in favor of. But we are talking about a small amount. And when you identified what the benefits are to the city, depending on what the projected revenue will be from Mr. Box, it does give us a chance to meet revenue. Like I said, if there hadn't been so many different problems that have arisen from this, my response might have been different. If we had actually basically followed the plan that was presented originally, the brewery would have already been open months ago.
I see this as completely separate issues, though. Even
Right.
if the brewery had opened several months ago, I would still bring this exact same policy to you, or not policy, but resolution, because it's really an economic development incentive to the company that happens to be in that building. It has nothing to do with the building or the owner of the building itself.
Right.
And the reason we do it up front and we don't wait till their doors are open or what have you is because typically the number one reason that businesses fail early off is because it's their cash flow. They have to, they have upfront costs before they open their doors, and this is an incentive that helps them remedy that hurdle up front. That's why we're doing the incentive up front.
Yeah, I'm well aware on the small business startups that it's pretty close to about 50% fail within the first 3 years. They're not.
But
they're
hey,
not,
we would get our money back in sales
Yeah.
tax.
Yeah, I understand that. The only reason I mentioned that, it was projected initially, not by you, that the money was needed to could possibly use to meet a September loan payment. And then I believe Trish, last time she was here, to me alluded to the fact that she thought, or the impression I got was that the loans had been restructured for Mr. Box, and he's caught in the middle. He's the one that's leasing that space from Mr. Morrison. And at that point, she had indicated that without that, there's a possibility that the business might not be able to open. And then the last time she was here, she pretty much came to the conclusion that the $5,000 commitment from the city wasn't going to make or break the brewery. And that was her last statement here. That would have been the last meeting.
I think
back.
other parties have stepped in and to supplement them, and
Okay.
I don't think it was ever. This is absolutely make or break, but this can ease the burden and help them sleep better at night because they are having other issues that this would just help. I don't think $5,000 is going to make or break them necessarily.
Right.
But it is important that the city shows their support and I know that we had said we would do this, and whether or not that Craig had the authority to do that or not is not anything I want to bring into question.
Right.
But we also want to show other businesses that we incentivize them coming to town, and that we're progressive and we want businesses to locate here.
Sure.
So it not only helps Indie Brew Works, but it helps our image and it helps our perception. It has lots of benefits.
Sure.
Well, I think the thing that we keep coming back to, it was the process. We've said we were interested. We've said they could make an application. The problem that put us in when a commitment is made without us knowing and somebody's dependent on it, it puts us in a bind because we've got to have procedures. It's none of this has been established ahead of time. It's all based upon what a commitment was made. And even though, we talked each time about the Economic Advisory Board coming on, and we need a total picture. And we shouldn't be binding our board with a commitment and then, okay, we'll do this, but now go ahead and you're free to reject it. We brought up the Economic Advisory Board months, and there was debate that we didn't even need it. But at that time that it was said, we don't need it, it closed down before, that this commitment was already made for economic incentive. And that's a good reason why we really needed it then. Now, to come back and look at another route to get the money, and, it's not, we never should have been told their personal finances. That never should have been brought up in a public meeting. That is irrelevant to the qualifications of a grant. And to bring that into play in considering this was out of line. And when we look at what we need to establish policies ahead of time, we're not saying, I'm not saying that they wouldn't qualify, that the city shouldn't give it, but I'm saying we should have the program lined out ahead of time, and it should be a total package for our Economic Development Committee. And, to keep coming back with the same thing, it just keeps making it harder and harder. Their use of the money, because there's other things that could be more effective than $5,000 for all businesses. As the Economic Development Advisory Board, what are they going to come up looking at total package?
So
what is there
approving
gonna be?
this would neither help nor harm an economic development board. Historically, the city has not filtered all incentives through a board. That's why I brought it back in the form of a resolution. I mean, the commission can make a decision on an economic development incentive. I will also caution you that economic development will never be a one-size-fits-all policy. Some businesses want tax incentives. Some businesses want cash incentives. Some businesses, there are a lot of different forms of incentives that you can give, and we can have a base package that the Economic Development Board comes up with, but we will deviate from that package. I would bet 9 times out of 10 because that's what.
It would be the board that's deviating, not the staff.
But they would be presented with what the company wants, and they would discuss whether or not they, wanted to do that, or there would be negotiations of that sort. But to say we can't do any incentive without an economic development advisory board is kind of a far stretch, because we've done it numerous times in the past. It has worked well. We've delayed multiple times the appointment of this board. This is a issue that has come up. This is a company that is wanting to start prior to that board's formation and prior to their appointment, prior to their available first meeting. So I think it fits a multitude of criteria that would say this should be filtered through the commission on this instance, rather than if this came up a year from now when that board was already in place and we're in the beginning phases, by all means, this would filter through that committee first. But that's not really the circumstances that we're under. I mean, the board gets appointed next meeting, right?
Right.
And then, I mean, they have to be able to meet. Are you expecting them to crank out a policy in one meeting?
Well, why is the deadline that they need the money now?
Because businesses that are starting up, their number one issue is cash flow. They need the money
But the money,
ahead of time to start and to run their businesses and to have all of those startup costs. $5,000 now to them is worth more than $5,000 in a year.
the money that, when we met with Mrs. Box, she mentioned the $5,000 grant. It wasn't for startup. It was what she wanted to use it for. It wasn't for operation.
Well,
It
I
wasn't
think
for
most of your
equipment.
startup is not going to be for operation necessarily.
It was for
because
the
you're
fire
not-
alarm system in the building.
Well, because they're going to have to reallocate resources, and yes, that would be something, I think I wrote in here what they could use it for.
She said it was going to pay Morrison for the fire alarm system.
So in here I put this, specify that the funding will be used to start operations in Independence, Kansas, purchase new safety systems, machinery and equipment, and/or provide employee training. And I would argue that it is an operating cost because they can't operate it without it. I mean, we're giving them money to start operating their business. That's what it's going to take for them to start operating. So why would we put any other limitations on it? Our goal is to help them so that they can help us.
So the whole process of flow actually hadn't changed from the initial time that this was presented to us. I mean,
I've
the need
changed
for
this-
it is still, the wording may have changed, how it's going to be directed and used, but it's that tenet that has not actually changed from the first time this was brought before the commission.
Well, I think the first time we brought it, it was going to be a $5,000 payment based off of 5 employees, and
Right.
I don't recall the exact stipulations of how it would, be tracked and everything, but I can tell you how it is written in this agreement. It's $5,000 up front. The stipulations is that it's over a 60-month period, so a 5-year period. 0% interest accrual. We will forgive. Their first anniversary date is December 31st, 2020. So during this it's a year and 3 months. At the end of that year, they need to have established 5 full-time equivalent positions. On that first anniversary date, we will forgive $200 per employee of this debt. If they employ someone that lives inside the city limits, we will increase that 25% to $250 per employee. If they fail to meet those stipulations, then they have to pay back that year's portion of the loan. So, for example, if they didn't meet that their very first year, they would pay back $1,000.
Okay.
The second year, if they didn't meet it in their second year for whatever reason, it would be, if the loan is accelerated, or if the forgiveness is accelerated by in-town employees, the math gets a little bit harder to explain up front, but basically you take whatever portion of the, how did I write it? The outstanding principal balance. So whatever their outstanding principal balance is divided by the number of terms left is what they would be asked to pay back in that year. Now, if they go out of business within this 5-year period, they would pay the entire loan back. We wouldn't be out what we've forgiven, but we would say that they have to pay it back. I know that if they go out of business, it's because they filed bankruptcy. Normally, you don't get anything back from that. I'm comfortable structuring it that way because I'm confident that we will have received a benefit of greater than $5,000 for them being in existence for 4 months. So that doesn't give me any heartburn. They will be required on an annual basis to give us their Kansas Department of Labor report just to verify that what they're reporting to us is in fact true.
Right.
Let's see. Any other specific questions?
Okay. No, I don't think I have any more.
Okay.
Commissioner Flish?
No.
Okay. Lacey, thank you.
No problem.
The only information I have, I'm trying to think, what has been done in the past. And I'm even getting confused how long I've even been here sitting in this chair. Not tonight, but I mean, in general. But that could be debated. There's always a sense of urgency. And we created something before a process was identified and put into place. And I understand the reasoning behind that. But to go through the proper procedure, if the Economic Development Board that's appointed, they go through the business incentive package and they determine what, they agree with that, they want to make some additions, they want to make some changes, they want to clear up some of the language. And if that's what they would be willing to consider and move forward with, then I would be more than willing to follow their direction that they're giving. I've never operated or run a business. The people that are going to be on this committee have finance experience. They have business experience. With the look at the candidates that we have, that they're all going to bring something to the table. So, I could see moving in that direction when the board makes the recommendations, because that's why we've established a board to give us some directions on what they feel are good, sound, adequate policies, something to follow.
I think that's a great idea for when the board is actually established and running. We're talking about a situation where that's months down the road.
All right.
Can I say something there? Just historically, I've been on board quite a while, and I can speak that you had said what had been done before. Well, there's never been a board telling the commission or the city manager, what to do. It's always, usually the commission just rubber stamps the city manager. That didn't happen here. Feathers got ruffled or whatever. I've never seen that happen before, honestly. The amount of money here is particularly, it's low compared.
Right.
Cessna was given a lot of incentives.
Sure.
I think if you appoint the board and ask them to adopt a written policy that applies to everything that has been done in the past, it's not going to happen. They can't. The board's going to.
No, I'm not asking them to adopt everything in the past. I'm just looking at what we've done without a policy in place before. That was my question. But, so I'm not,
Well, I would say this is a drop in the bucket compared to what's
Sure.
been done before.
Sure. I
If you're
I understand
opposing
that.
this because there's no policy in place, there's never been a policy in place.
sure,
It's been,
I understand
what does
that.
it take to get this business going and show that we support them? And that's the policy.
I understand
So,
that. This is
I
the
don't know how-
first time.
Why appointing an economic advisory board changes that. It's going
No,
to be back
because
in your
again,
laps, and we're going to have the same
The
discussion.
bottom line is that the commissioners are the one that set the policy. We get direction from city staff, we get direction from all the advisory boards and committees that we have, and they present information to us, and we either agree with it, we send it back for clarification, we make changes to it, we adopt part or a whole, whatever the terms to be, that the
Well-
final determination falls on the commission anyway. They're the ones that set
You
policy.
say adopt a policy, that's a plan, but
Right.
I don't think you're ever going to see a plan that covers all the different types of incentives that are handed out. There's just too
No.
many possibilities. So I
I understand that.
And this has been vetted by a lot of people that do know something about economic development. It's, it was not just thrown
Sure.
together. There was a lot of hard work and
Sure.
research that went into it.
I'm not trying to argue with you. I just think if
Well.
you wait and have the board come back, you're going to be exactly where you are right now.
Possibility, could be.
But, because, I think when you say
And
policy.
that's what we said from the beginning, that if, and I think it was even you asked, that if a program is adopted, can they reapply? And we said yes, they can do an application. But that needs to be done, and our method is saying, we're appointing an economic development board to look at all aspects, whether they address this first or whether they address that last. That would be tasked to them by the commission to review it and to do it, and it can be done. It's already been acknowledged that the $5,000 isn't a critical stopper to get it done. I think, I'm supportive of the Indie Brew Works. I don't think there's any question that we want to see it go, but we just want to set up a procedure that this doesn't happen again, that somebody makes a commitment and saying, here's an incentive plan, and there is no incentive plan out there.
So if
That we need, and all that we're doing is we're being forced to make some plan acceptable that they get the money now because that money had already been committed. And we're saying we need an economic development plan, so we're across the board with everybody set up by the Economic Development
But you will
Advisory
never be
Board.
across the board for everyone. So if the Economic Development Board
But this is
met,
the way we're saying we were going to go now.
I know, but I have a question. If the Economic Development Board, at their very first meeting, they said, we will never have time to actually formalize and complete an entire policy, that's something that's going to take us a year. Does that mean there will be no incentives in that year? Or if they come back and they meet and they make that decision, but they say, we want to incentivize Indie Brew Works, so we want to approve this, we want to recommend that they approve it right now. Will
Well-
you be accepting it without a policy, or we are doing nothing to incentivize without an actual policy that addresses every single thing that you want?
That's between the commission and the advisory board.
What do we tell businesses that want to come to us then? That we're in limbo for the foreseeable future until the board advises the committee?
We're working on it.
So also, if they throw together a policy and they say, these are our base requirements, but we feel that Indie Brew Works fits whatever, and we want to give them $10,000 instead of $5,000, are you going to, are you going to take the full direction of the committee? I mean, I think this is going to pose a lot of problems, not just for Indie Brew Works, but for businesses wanting to come here. If we can do nothing until a economic development board has been established, has felt comfortable with writing an entire policy that encompasses everything, that we are going to do nothing, then literally we are going to see nothing in this city. I think that's...
And I think that's what the commission and the Economic Advisory Board work out, a schedule and a process to do it, because they answer to the commission and they respond to the commission. And if that's your concern, then that would be the first thing we bring to the advisory board, is to set priorities and how to address it. To start looking, you know, like Lewis said, some of them were instrumental that have made application in bringing Cessna to Independence. So they're very familiar with that procedure. They're very familiar with what the companies are looking at. They're, the applicants that we had submitted, a lot of them are very knowledgeable about that. We're not just starting from square one, and they will be able to bring things that we don't know, that, you know, other options. There are other things that they can do because they've worked with businesses to bring them to town. So you can't base a what if without the committee together. You know, what if this had been brought up in September 2018 when it was first brought up between the bots, and the commission was included then, and we had time to develop a program before the Economic Development Committee. We had time to research it then, and not being said, here's a bill, you need to approve the bill. And like Jeff said, traditionally it's just the commission said yes. We need to look at the plan, and if we're going to have this advisory board, then they need to be free to make the decisions, and then look at it, take their expertise.
I agree, but we should not halt all progress in the meantime. You don't halt all business progress because you think you have something coming down the pipeline later. You still have to operate, and you still have to try and bring people to town. If we can do absolutely, if there's nothing to work with until something is established, that really puts the city in a bind. I think that between the people that have put this together and your knowledge of economic development, I think it's pretty clear to see that this incentive and bringing Indie Brewworks to town will create a very positive impact on our community. And to say that we can't do it at all because there's no policy,
we're not stopping them from coming. We're supportive of it. And
Well-
we'll take that action. It won't be in the time that you want it, but it will be done.
What if an opportunity comes in the next 2 months for a business that wants to locate here and employ 100 people? Are you going to make them wait 6 months to the advisory committee and the policy?
They will leave. I'm just telling you, they will not do it here if there is zero
We're
talk
talking
of
about this. We're not talking about that.
But why? Where you want to streamline it across all parties? If we won't even talk
Mayor,
about
this has
this
gone
one
on
because
longer
there's
now.
another one,
Yeah.
then
Okay. Let's move past this.
Call for a vote.
You know, it's this. Sometimes you're put in a situation that you don't want to be, and this is one of them. I'm just not really comfortable when you're forced to do something. I understand that that's the way the circumstances played out. As far as I'm concerned, I don't know what we've done in the past. We've never had an actual policy set up, so I imagine the people that were doing the recruiting with Cessna, I know they offered, there were millions of dollars of improvements that were offered. I'm sure there were numerous incentives that were given. It is a small amount. We've taken the heat for this, for the delay in the brewery being open, which we have nothing to do with that. That falls on the responsibility of the contractor owner of the building. So maybe that's where people need to start looking at. Just to show, this is my opinion, you're entitled to yours, Leonard, just to show good faith, and like I said, I would not normally do this, because this is, we kind of put the cart before the horse, and then now we're trying to develop the policy afterwards after an incentive was already offered. And that's just not a very good way of doing business, whether you're in the business or whether you're in government business. It's a terrible way to enact policy after the fact. But with that being said, sometimes you have to compromise, and in this case, I'm going to move forward that with reservations, which I've already mentioned, that being we do not have a policy in, that I would be in favor of moving in that direction, but I'm not happy about it. I'm not happy about being put in that position. I'm not happy about making promises before a policy is actually developed and set. That's just, I have deep reservations about that. But if this gets the ball moving forward and it quells down some of the controversy that's involved in it, there'll be controversy right now as soon as this meeting's over with. But that's part of the process. I would be willing to, even with the reservations, go ahead and move forward to settle this part of it once and for all. But the policies, there needs to be some type of policy set in place so we have a guideline to look at and to follow. And will it cover everything? No. Nothing ever is going to cover everything. But we need to make sure everybody's on a similar playing field. If we give it to this and someone comes, well, this is what you gave to them. You don't have a policy, but this is what I want. When you set some basic guidelines up to follow concerning policy, at least you have something to follow, and here's what we have available. If you want to consider other incentives and you want to add to that, and dictated by what type of business or industry that's coming in, fine. Because it's an evolving policy. It's going to continue to evolve depending on a lot of different factors. So, to show that I'm willing to move in that direction, that's my thought on this. But I'm not happy with how this played out, and excuse me, I almost said something I didn't want to say. I'm not happy about being thrown under the bus, and I'll argue with anybody that attempts to do that. So, bring it on. That's my thought. So, the motion is, I move that we authorize, how's that read? move to adopt the resolution to enter into a forgivable loan agreement with Indie Brew Works and authorize $5,000 loan payment. All in favor signify by.
I'll second the motion.
You'll second the motion. All right. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
All right. All right, moving on. We are item F. Consider setting the date of November 21st, 2019 at 5:30 p.m. for a public hearing to consider the condemnation of a structure located at 301 Cement Street as dangerous and unsafe. David, how are you again?
I am good, Mayor. Mayor, this goes back to that unsound properties that we were dealing with earlier.
Right.
And we did multiple times to attempt to contact the owners, and this lady finally responded.
Okay.
And her desire, as was in the packet, was to demo this house. So she lives in Texas, so we are just setting the date on November 21st of 2019 for a public hearing to consider that. Condemnation for dangerous and unsafe.
Okay. All right. Well, this will be an easy one. She is in favor, but doesn't have any plans for it. I think this is one I looked at. I think I had one of the neighbors call me that live in that area. I probably looked at this about 6 months ago. Doesn't look like anything's changed. Looked like the condition has gotten worse. I try to get around and look at the houses that are on the condemned list firsthand. Sometimes pictures don't do it justice. Sometimes they do. So yeah, nothing's changed. It's weeded debris laying all about the yard. It's been empty for many, many years. It's been a long time since it's been occupied. Gentlemen?
Makes it easy if they're in agreement. Makes it a lot quicker.
Gary?
Absolutely.
You good? All right. I make a motion to consider scheduling a special commission meeting for October 9th. Excuse me, I'm on the wrong page. I move that a public hearing, I was reading the green, Kelly, sorry. It stood out before the other. I move that a public hearing for consideration of condemnations be set for November 21st, 2019 at 5:30 p.m. for 301 Cement Street. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. All right. Item G. Consider scheduling a special commission meeting for October 9th, 2019 for a site visit to the water plant at 9 a.m. and a work session at Memorial Hall to review Phase 2 at 10 a.m.
Third time's a charm.
Third time? Yeah. And this works into Sarah Unruh's
Yeah,
plans.
that's.
She's already in
They're gonna be here
town?
already that day, so.
And
Okay.
we'll just meet at 9 o'clock at the water treatment plant.
Yes. Yes.
Will it be open to the public also?
Yes.
Well, open meeting, yeah, I guess it will.
Yes, but it's a construction zone, so not accessible.
Will hard hats or anything be required?
We are not aware of any overhead
Okay.
hazards. If I become aware of any, I'll let you know. I have a pink one in my office you can wear.
Yeah.
Okay. And as far as the date and the time, both of you gentlemen are good with that?
Works for me.
For
Okay.
now.
For now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, then. I make a motion that we move to schedule a special commission meeting for October the 9th, 2019 for a site visit to the water plant at 9 a.m. and a work session at Memorial Hall to review Phase 2 at 10 a.m. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. Moving to reports, we have an update concerning 223 West Main. David?
Mayor, I really don't have a whole lot to update. We have not received anything yet. Mr. Morrison has indicated that his efforts will be to get the brewery open, and then he will focus after that towards submitting plans and working towards the other part. Last time I spoke to Robert was, I believe, venting was supposed to arrive this week and installation would occur, but I have not heard anything at this point as far as when they might be ready for that inspection or anything.
Has Morrison actually been on site since we've given him the requirements for the temporary occupancy permit? What do you needed to fulfill?
I have not seen Mr. Morrison since that commission meeting. I have spoke to him, and there's been a few emails, but I have not seen him since then, but I do not know.
Has he given any plan as to when he will be on site to start completing some of the issues with the first floor and the
only
basement?
thing he told me was his focus was he would get the brewery and those issue or items that we listed on the punch list to open the brewery, and that he would then focus after that on the plans and not to expect any plans until then.
Okay. If I understood right, and correct me if I'm wrong, when the brewery's scheduled to have an event, the middle of October?
I do believe from talking, I believe it's to Robert and Jessica, they do. I mean, I know that couple is working hard to get open here quickly,
Sure.
and I expect it does take Mr. Morrison's permission, so I expect to receive a call from them and Mr. Morrison at some point to come and do that inspection for that temporary occupancy.
Okay. They are of the understanding that Mr. Morrison is the holdup. Is that correct?
Yes. I mean,
Okay.
they understand everything that is transpiring. Yes.
Okay. Well, that's the reason why I asked if he had been on site. I've gone by numerous times and when I'm running errands, and today was the first day I saw Lee's Heating and Cooling. They had a couple of trucks on the premise, but I hadn't seen anyone. I just don't want to get back into a situation to where, they come back and say, well, we didn't have enough time, we weren't given enough notice.
Right.
And that's going to be hard to accept when I know that they've not been on site, that they've not been completing and working toward the completion of meeting the requirements to get that temporary occupancy permit. So I just want to make sure that the parties are understanding
Yes.
where the responsibility lies.
Yes.
Okay. Gentlemen?
Yeah. So, there was talking about the plans being revised, but have you received any revised drawings since the drawings were submitted with the building permit?
The only thing we received, Leonard, was after, I believe, the June 13th meeting or the 14th, we notified them that there were issues. I received a code footprint update. That is the only thing we received.
I think previous you said that, or in discussion, that the only thing that the code footprint revised was actually information about the occupancy group from B to F2.
That is correct.
And it deleted the
Yeah.
requirement for sprinkler on the notes of
Yes.
that drawing.
That's what led to our discussions with the fire marshal,
So-
trying to figure it out.
Have you received any correspondence with an explanation why the fire sprinkler system was eliminated?
I have not. We've just asked for stamped plans,
But
and we haven't received any.
even from construction, there was no communication that said, I'm leaving, I don't have to install the fire suppression system in the tenant space because of X.
Correct. I have not received
Yeah.
anything like that, no.
And the changes to the floor plans, none of those drawings have been resubmitted, so the only drawings show the original layout of apartments and
That is
walls.
correct.
Yeah.
We only have the original plans that were submitted back in 2018 that the building permit was issued for.
Okay, but there were just a few items of life safety or something on the
Yes.
partial occupancy, if I remember.
Yes, that is
So
correct. Yes.
That everything, it's a little confusing because you have to deal solely with a contractor, and yet trying to accommodate the tenant to make sure they only can go through the contractor too.
That is correct.
So,
Yep.
has there been any issues that you've had with the tenant, that something we couldn't accommodate, or?
No, I believe we've worked, been over backward. I mean, we were really trying to help Mr. Box and Jessica get open and do everything we can to, the temporary occupancy that we gave them and everything. So we're doing everything we can to get the brewery open.
And just the next phase, once you get the drawings, everybody's pool's ready to look at them and make
Yeah.
decisions, so everything can move forward.
Yes, he's indicated he's ready at any time, and he turns things around quick. I mean, he is the.
Okay.
So
We just want to make sure
yes,
he's on board, that
yeah. I
everything
haven't
can get finalized.
emailed him lately, so he's probably wondering.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been several weeks since he's probably heard anything from me anyway. So
Okay.
David,
yes, sir.
refresh my memory. The original number of apartments that were on the original design.
Yes.
What was that number? Do you
I can't tell you
recall?
exactly. I can just tell you there's one additional apartment on each floor from the original plans.
Okay. When Westar put the electrical system in, or connected the electrical system, did their meter gang,
Correct. Yes.
did they set, were they setting a 4 gang, a 6 gang? Was
I
it
believe
a,
without remembering, it's either 6 or 7.
so they set additional meters to accommodate, would there be one, of course, for the brewery?
Correct.
And then for the apartments. So I guess what I was getting at was there enough positions for meters to accommodate the additional 2 apartments that were added in that original main breaker electric meter?
No.
It wasn't.
At this time, without the MEP, I am unsure how those apartments have been
And how they're going to be
powered, or
powered
how
by,
he's going to
because they
power
weren't
those. Yes.
included in the original plans that were drawn up and submitted back in November of 2018.
Correct. Those apartments weren't there, so I am not sure until he submits the MEP. Then we'll be able to determine how they're being powered.
Okay. Any more questions, Commissioner?
Just as long as we're ready to keep it going forward.
Yeah.
We are ready.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, if you happen to talk to Mr. Morrison, he's on site. If you just shoot or make that information
Yes.
available to Kelly, and then she can notify us, so we'll know that he is on site and working toward the goals that needs to be met. So,
We will do that.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. All righty. We've all covered the tree board minutes and the historical preservation minutes. And moving to item C, and I'm going to go ahead and read this. This is coming from the EAA Chapter 980, Independence, Kansas, and it is regard to Airport Manager Mr. Cody Shamlin. On behalf of the members of the Experimental Aircraft Association, EAA, Chapter number 980 of Independence, Kansas, we wish to express our gratitude and appreciation for the hard work and professionalism exhibited by Cody Shamblin, Airport Manager of the Independence Municipal Airport. While many people in his position would view the recent celebration of flight event held at the Independence, Kansas Airport as a hassle and just more work, Cody saw it as an opportunity to showcase the city of Independence and the airport. His attention to detail, both in preparation and during the event, was exceptional. His numerous contributions included painting, cleaning, mowing, sweeping the taxiways, attending many planning meetings, coordinating with the FAA, recording a special announcement on the AWS radio system, and many other behind-the-scenes activities. Independence is blessed to have such a hardworking, dedicated, enthusiastic team member. His efforts are greatly appreciated. The celebration of flight flew nearly 100 young people on Young Eagle into introductory flights in this first-time Young Eagles event in Independence. Many people from the community visited Independence Municipal Airport for the first time. Pilots from Kansas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas attended the event. This success was made possible by the support we received from Cody Champlin. Cody, on behalf of the commissioners and the City of Independence, thank you very much. We appreciate your dedication, your hard work, and you're going above and beyond to make sure not only the event was a success, but all the time and dedication, the effort that you put in. Greatly appreciated by the commissioners, staff, and the community of Independence. Thank you.
And Mayor, I went out to that event and actually observed Cody waiting on a pilot that had flown in from another area, and his customer service skills are bar none. I mean, he is just really, I mean, he's a pro. So I actually, watched him in action, so I was really happy when they sent this letter, because Cody is definitely one of our rock stars.
That's fantastic.
Good to hear.
So great.
Well, congratulations, Cody. All right. Commissioner comments?
Steve Amasinger with the American Legion called the other day. He didn't have your phone numbers, but Monday at 5:30, the American Legion National Director will be here in Independence, and he invited us out. He'll be arriving about 5:30, and then I think he invited us to stay for the meal. Our wives, he said, could come too. So the meal will be at 6 o'clock.
At 6 o'clock, yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're able to, gentlemen are able to attend, if you correspond back with Steve Amasinger and let him know so he can include us on the list. I've went ahead and RSVP'd
Yeah.
mine, so he's looking for
Sorry,
me and the missus to come.
what's that last name?
Amasinger,
AEMI.
I dare you.
Steve.
It is called Steve A. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I'd probably spell it wrong. Oh, no, I would.
Thank you.
I think the director comes every other year or once a year, and he always tries to invite us. So that was all I had.
Okay. Gary?
I don't have anything. Thank you.
Okay. I don't either. We've already addressed, we only had one public concern, and we've already taken care of that.
City manager comments?
Kelly, anything?
I don't have anything.
Okay. Last but not least on the list, we have an executive session, attorney-client. It's scheduled for 15 minutes, and it will include the commission, Kelly, David Cowan, Lacey, Mike Vasseur, and Jeff Chubb. So I move that we recess for an executive session for consultation with the city attorney regarding a legal issue pursuant to the attorney-client privilege exception KSA 75-4319B2, and that will be for 15 minutes. And the open meeting will resume at 7:25. Okay, I make the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All right, the meeting is called back into session. In regards to the executive session, no action was taken, and we move to adjournment. I make a motion that we adjourn. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Thank you.